Hey guys, behind me I have my EJ8 Civic Coupe, and today we're going to go over what it has cost me to turbo this car, all of the cost breakdown, turbo, dyno session, the extra mechanical work that I couldn't do myself, and the money that you can save. I'm going to break down some of the parts that you don't need to get, and I'm going to break down some of the parts I definitely recommend you get if you're going to turbo your Civic, or specifically a B18 B2 non-VTEC engine. Some of this can apply to a VTEC engine, but I'm just focusing on the non-VTEC, going the cheaper option. The transmission and the engine only cost me $600. However, I'm not using the transmission I got with the motor, and I'll explain later in the video why I decided not to go with the transmission that came with this engine. It's getting late and I'm getting hungry, so I'm going to go get some food, and then I'm going to sit down and go over all of the costs with you guys, and that's coming up right now. This all started with a plain Gumtree acquired $1,200 EJ8 Honda Civic. Auto, paint was screwed, cheap. It was a good deal. Not a lot of people want auto EKs, but in our situation, worked out absolutely fine. My old turbo CRV blew the B20 B2 sleeves apart at about 10 PSI. Needed something a bit better, so I decided to go for a B18 B2. Let's trade displacement for reliability. Now for the breakdown. Block and head. Sent off the block and the head to Rick Corbett Engine Reconditioners. They did a great job surfacing, cleaning, and getting everything prepared for what was about to come. For the internals, we have Nippon Racing pistons, scat rods, ACL bearings, ARP head studs, a triple layer MLS head gasket, and Brian Crower dual valve springs. Now this is all essential stuff that you will need if you want to make that 500 horsepower barrier. You can skip out on a couple of these things, but the reliability is probably not going to be there. People have made 500 horsepower with going a stock head gasket, stock rods, and stock bearings, but how long does it really last? Nobody knows. This was about making that 500 horsepower and making it reliably. The things that I did keep stock were the intake manifold and the throttle body. Things that you don't really need to upgrade until you're pushing a lot more power. The turbo journey started off with a T70 off eBay. This turbo was way too big, way too laggy, didn't make boost until right up the top end, and a B18 B2 doesn't like revving. These two combinations didn't go together well. So I sold that. Then I got a Max Speeding Rods T04E with I think a 0.52 rear housing. This had the complete opposite effect. It came on boost way too quickly, and then in the top end, it wouldn't push anything more than about 22 to 24 PSI reliably. So I sold that. I decided and settled on a Pulsar G30 900. This changed the entire car completely. We got the low end, we got the high end, and it really made bulk power in the mid. This is something that you don't need to go spend money on testing it out. Done the hard yards, B18 or a B series that you want to rev to 7, that turbo is the way to go. Yes, it's on the more expensive side. You can get the eBay turbo is a lot cheaper. Those turbos were all mounted onto a cast manifold. Now, I did have a stainless steel manifold. It lasted maybe a couple of weeks and then it cracked everywhere and it was a pain. So I went to a cast iron log style manifold. It works, it's reliable, really thick, have no problems with it whatsoever. Cooling, I have a Jack Spanion backdoor radiator intercooler combo. Now you don't need this setup. I had been running just a standard eBay, I think it was $150 intercooler and a stock radiator, which absolutely worked fine. I've only got that in my build for reliability and for future proofing. The stock radiator is good for a few back-to-back runs, but after that, you're gonna have to let the car cool down. The intercooler piping, you could go with just your standard generic eBay hose clamp intercooler piping. You don't need to go for anything fancy. You can get a 2.5 eBay intercooler piping kit fairly cheap for the Civics. I've gone with a custom setup from Ben at Nuriopta Automotive. He custom fabbed up all my intercooler piping. He's also done my downpipe and my exhaust. There was a bit of an expense there, but I thought it was worth it, and I'm supporting a local business. Tuning, fueling, and ignition. Probably some of the most important parts of a build, especially today. For the fueling system, I went a Walbro 525 in-tank. No surge tank. I'm running stock fuel lines. I've got an eBay fuel pressure regulator, so nothing fancy there. It is a rising rate fuel pressure regulator, which you will need if you're going on boost. That'll keep that fuel pumping into the motor. I had a set of, I'm not sure what they were. They were 1000cc. They were off of Gumtree. I got them flow tested, got the data sheet, put the parameters in, they work fine. Now I'm running a KPM 1500cc injector setup. Very important for when you're going boost is making sure that you have a really good fuel setup that can deliver the fuel that you need to be able to make the power. We don't want things going bang, especially when we're spending some money on trying to make things reliable. The ignition, I started on a Dizzy setup, had to really plug the gaps down a lot on the BKR 7Es that I was running. I wouldn't recommend 6s, they're just not quite up to par. So what I've done now is I've swapped to a coil on plug setup. This can be done very cheap, very easy. You will need a custom ECU of some sort. It was so easy and it was so cheap to do that I would have done it a long time ago. Just didn't think I needed to, and I didn't think it would be so easy and so cheap. I was worried, as sometimes when you go into the unknown, you're a little bit worried about, I don't know what I'm doing here. But luckily the guides and everything online was just very informative and made the process really easy. So definitely something I recommend doing. If you've got a Haltech or you've got a chipped ECU with the capabilities. Tuning, this is a big one. I went with a piggybacked P28 ECU. It had a Motes ostrich, and I ran that for a long time, and honestly never had a problem with it. I went with a Haltech because a friend was upgrading and he sold me his very cheap. It was a hard deal to pass up. Haltech does have a lot more support. Motes doesn't make ostriches anymore, so the support's really lacking. It's hard to get a lot of information, whereas with Haltech you have all of the information that you need at your fingertips. It made everything a lot easier when it came to the tuning, when it came to the electronics, even finding workshops that were happy to do work on the car. Knowing that it had a Haltech made them feel more comfortable working on the car. The rest of the drivetrain, the gearbox. The clutch is a stage 3 Exedi with a light flywheel. That hasn't really caused me any issues. I've had a little bit of slipping here and there, but I think that's just my foot. But I may upgrade that in the future too. I think I'm probably around at the limit. I think 500, 600 horsepower is probably about the limit of that clutch. This is one that's going to surprise a lot of people because my gearbox is a stock B20 Honda CRV gearbox. Nothing's been done to it at all. It's just a stock Honda gearbox. I've been running that from the start. I had to put in some Integra drive shafts. That was because the splines on the stock D series hubs and with the gearbox, B series gearbox, they didn't match up. The CRV ones don't work either because the splines on the wheel hubs are not the same between CRV and Civic. The CRV ones are bigger. The other suspension mods I've got is coilovers, which I'm probably going to go back to stocks in the front. The coilovers aren't helping traction in the front. And I do have a cheap eBay traction bar. That was a game changer. I had a lot of axle tramp before. Now I don't. Fantastic addition for like $100 or $150 off eBay. So definitely something I recommend. For engine mounts, I just went with stock engine mounts and a torque brace. That's it. Now we go from go to stop. How do we brake? Well, I did think it was a good idea to upgrade the braking system considering the run off on roll racing is not that long. And I remember when I was in my XR6 Turbo, I saw cars next to me, brakes on fire, spitting sparks, and then they're on fire. And I thought, definitely not something that I want to have to deal with because I can imagine it's not far from fire to another catastrophe. So I went with a upgraded brake system from an EK4/EM1, slightly bigger. I went with a T3 rotor and some Brembo pads, and the stopping power on the car is great. The car is light, so it doesn't need that much, but I knew I was going to be hitting those brakes hard at around 200 plus Ks an hour. Definitely something I recommend is upgrading those front brakes. As for fluids and wiring and the rest of the little bits and pieces, probably all up maybe $500. Oh yeah, almost forgot. I have a power tune digital dash. I think it's a V5. Most people would have seen this if they've watched my other videos. It does make the car look a lot better, but it's definitely not something that you need. I got it from a second-hand divorce sale. $250. She said, take it. My ex left it here. I was like, say less. I'm going to get that and put it in my car. Definitely something I probably wouldn't have got if I didn't get that divorce-y deal. It does look cool. It is customizable and it meant removing the gauges. It'll help clean the interior up. I've gone with a stock interior. This will just help add to that look. The numbers. Getting it on the dyno. I didn't dyno it for a long time and tuned that car on the street with a friend of mine. This is where the Haltech really shined. There was nothing fancy about what we did. It was just doing a pull, adjusting adjusting the fueling, adjusting the timing, using the butt dyno, seeing how it felt, and then letting the car do the rest. I did tune it on the Most Ostrich, but that was more complicated because it was more about checking and then making small adjustments and then doing another pull, making a small adjustment, doing another pull. It was a lot longer of a process. Obviously it would be a lot easier with a dyno, but it was all street tuned up until recently. Ben at Nuriopta Automotive chucked it on the dyno and did some pulls. Now, Ben did some work on the tune because he does know how to work with Haltech, cleaned everything up, made everything nice again, and the car currently, as it sits, is sitting somewhere around the realm of 330 kilowatts. Now, that's not 500 horsepower, but it is if you take away drivetrain losses. It's about 500 at the crank, which is pretty good. Now, you also got to factor in we were slipping on the dyno, so the power curve was a little bit iffy. I did have slicks on when we were on the dyno. But the reality is that's the power it made on the dyno. Since then, have wound it up even further. Let's talk money. Now I'm gonna do a part by part breakdown, step by step. We'll go through it together and we'll itemize all of the things that I've spent money on in the car to get it to where it is now. Then I'm going to also give you a list of things that were optional costs, and then we're gonna do a build breakdown at the bottom to give you the actual total amount of how much this Civic actually cost me to build. So the first thing we have is the shell. The shell was an EJ8 shell from Gumtree. That cost me $1,200. Now this was a running, driving regoed car. You can probably pick up something like a EK1 with a blown motor for around $600 or $700. The engine block, that cost me around $600. Probably maybe get it a little bit cheaper elsewhere, but I think the price was about right. Engine internals and parts. Nippon pistons, scat rods, ARP studs, ACL bearings, BC valve springs, head gasket, and a couple of incidentals. I got a kit from the US from a guy on Instagram, and it cost me $800. But you could probably get some of this stuff cheaper if you bought it bit by bit, but I'm gonna put that in the cheaper substitute items. So the turbo system, it's a Pulsar G3900 with an eBay cast manifold and a little bit of incidentals here and there. Obviously I used the eBay wastegate. $1,800 was my cost for it, but you could do it a lot cheaper if you went a bit cheaper on the turbo, say an eBay or a Max Speeding Rods turbo. Probably do it for somewhere around $500 if they have something similar to a G3900, and I bet that they do. Exhaust and piping. Custom exhaust and intercooler piping was done by Ben at Nuri Auto, and it set me back about $1,500. Now you could do most of this yourself if you know how to use a welder. You could do a 90-degree exhaust straight out the bonnet, save yourself some money there. I personally wouldn't, just for streetability, but you could probably do all this fairly cheap with cheap eBay intercooler piping for around $150, $200, and then cut the exhaust off, send the downpipe to the moon. Fuel system was a Walbro 525 with KPM 1500cc injectors, eBay fuel pressure regulator, and stock lines. Now this altogether is about $1,000, but I know you can do it cheaper. ECU tuning, I originally had a P28 ECU with a Motes piggyback, but I've gone to Haltech for future proofing. So the Haltech set me back around $2,000 with a wideband controller and a couple other bits and pieces. The chipped ECU, you can pick them up for probably around $300, maybe $400. Ignition system, coil on plug is what I'm running now, but you don't have to. I would recommend it because it's only $130. I would definitely do it now that I have done it. Clutch and flywheel, went with the Extreme Stage 3 clutch with a lightened flywheel. That set me back around $450. I know you can go for some eBay clutch and it would probably be cheaper, but I definitely recommend sticking with a name brand. Transmission was a stock CRV trans. Now for me it was free because I had one. But if you want one, it's going to probably set you back a little bit of money, maybe $100, maybe $200. Drive shafts, I got them off someone off Facebook for $300 from Interstate, shipped them over. Definitely something you will need. This is required for the build, for a B series into a EK1 specifically. Suspension, I went with the eBay traction bar, definitely recommend it. Heavy duty engine mounts and coilovers, probably could do without the traction bar. The engine mounts I definitely recommend, but again, you can do without them. So you could do all this stuff for free, but I would definitely recommend these as an upgrade if you're going for that power, just because it's going to put the power down a lot easier and the car's not going to shake to oblivion when you come on boost or twist the motor out of the engine bay. For the brakes and wheels, I went with the upgraded EK4 EM1 rotors and hubs, RPF1 front rims, and Avid AV56s on the rears. I run the Avid AV56s all round if it's on the street, and then I'll switch to the RPF1s with PSR radials if I'm going to the track. It's going to set you back around $700, but you could go a lot cheaper rim and tire setup. You could even go stock. Wouldn't recommend it, but you definitely could. Digital dash, this is something you don't require at all, but it's a nice to have, and I'm going to throw it in my list. The upgrades that I have at the moment in my build are the BC Stage 2 cams, gears, Supertech valves, but these aren't needed to get you to that 500 goal. You can do without these. And the miscellaneous, which is just bits and pieces. I put down there about $320. That's just for things like wiring and plugs and incidentals that you're going to come across throughout the build. A lot of the things I did myself with generic auto shop wiring and DTM plugs and things like that, you can go down that same route if you want to. So in conclusion, what you could get a Civic to 500 horsepower for is around $5,000. I would not recommend doing it at this price point for reliability and future-proofing's sake, but it is doable and I have done it. It's a nod to how cheap Hondas really can be. You can beat a lot of cars in a 500 horsepower, sub 1100 kilo car. But for reliability, if you're going to roll racing or you're drag racing, it's going to be somewhere between $9,000 and $10,000. I recommend spending the money here at this price point. This is your best chance to have something that's going to snap necks down the street. It's going to snap necks at the track. For under 10K, that's not bad. Reliable, street, track, daily, go out, have fun, get in, drive it, bring it home, leave tears on V8 drivers' cheeks. And it's all for under 10K. Now, for my build cost, the full weapon with all its upgrades, around $15,000 at this stage. Now, we haven't even seen the current setup run or dynoed in its current form. It could make much more power. So all the highlights, the AMG kills, the LS Turbo kills that I've had, that was on my old setup. That was on the sub $10,000 setup. Where we are at $15,000 and how much harder this thing goes, I guess we'll have to wait and see. So in conclusion, all of that power, all of that fun for less than a price of a used Camry. I don't think it gets much better than that. This has been such a fantastic fun building process for me. You're gonna learn so much along the way. That's the best thing about this is you're gonna learn, and you can learn cheap. It's not like you're destroying things that cost tens of thousands of dollars every time you break something. So for $5,000, $10,000 or $15,000, you can have something that shreds Lambo and kills supercars, and you can still take it to dinner, drive it home, and drop the kids off at school on Monday. I think it doesn't get much better than that. Now, if you want to see how this thing really does since the upgrades and how much of a difference they make, subscribe, stay tuned, because we are going to be doing more roll racing content. We're going to see how fast this thing really goes. How much has it increased in power? How much faster is it down the roll racing strip? I'm going to bring you all that content and more, so subscribe and keep updated with all the new content that's about to drop. Reflecting on this whole build process, would I do it again? Hell yes. There isn't anything that would stop me from doing this again. It's raw, loud, rowdy, and it's a whole lot of fun. And I think I've probably had a lot more fun in this car and building this car than if I had gone and bought something for even more money that was just as quick. I probably had a lot more fun in this car than I would have had if I was driving a Lambo. And I know some people go, oh yeah, whatever. But no, I seriously do. I've got a lot of cars. I've got a Supra. I've had a lot more fun building and enjoying this car than all the other cars that I have had, and probably all the cars that I will have in the future. And one of the best things about this is I've tried to keep the car as drivable as possible. It's full interior, stock seats, stock headliner, stock sound deadening. I haven't stripped it at all. It is a stock car. There's not even any lightened parts on it. I have all stock bodywork. I don't have to drive a stripped out tin can to beat some of these cars that I've been beating. Now, for most of those who are asking, the car doesn't have AC, but that is not because it can't have AC. It's because when we did the engine swap, I got the AC degassed and took it out. I've never replaced it, and I haven't seen any need to replace it because all the roll racing that we do is at night time and the temps are fairly low. If I wanted to, I could put the AC system back in, but it's not really going to make the car better in any way apart from being able to drive it on really hot days. It's just a lot easier to just not drive the car on really hot days. You think you can beat this for under 15 grand? Come to roll racing with your sub $15,000 car and see how we go. I'll line you up. Drop your cost below of how much your build was. Tag someone who spent 50 grand just to get gapped by a Honda. Smash the like button, helps the algorithm. Hit subscribe to keep updated in everything that we're doing. We're just getting started. This is going to be a crazy journey of what happens to this car from now and what things just get absolutely taken to Gapplebees. Thanks for watching. It's been a blast. Thanks for staying with us all the way through to the end of the video. If you haven't done already, make sure you subscribe because we're about to go on one hell of a ride to see how far this thing really goes. See you next time. I'll see you at Roll Racing.
I'm a true champion.